Jack Harmon sat in the dim-lit bar, nursing his last drink as a shady auction took place in front of him. A wrecked pot up for grabs, starting at just 1 credit. Smirking, he tossed in his last coin, expecting nothing more than a busted piece of junk. 1 credit, he called out. But when the pot opened, and out stepped not one, but 15 women, each with skin shimmering like crimson fire, their bodies wrapped in silver garments that left nothing to the imagination. Jack suddenly realized he'd just gambled away far more than he bargained for. The chase was on, and it wasn't just the syndicate hunting them anymore. No, the stakes were higher, and Jack was about to become part of something much bigger than he ever expected. Want to keep up with the wildest stories and characters? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It's completely free. Jack Harmon leaned back in the pilot seat of the Eclipse, his beat-up salvage ship, sipping a lukewarm cup of synth coffee that tasted more like regret than caffeine. The asteroid bar, Rusty Drift, hummed around him, a grimy little dive floating on the edge of the Perseus Belt, where smugglers, scavengers, and dreamers swapped lies over cheap drinks. He parked here after a week of hauling junk, hoping to score a quick gig or at least a good story to tell. So far, all he had was a sore back and a tab he couldn't quite pay. Another round, Jack? The bartender, a three-eyed Zolak named Griv, waved a tentacle over the counter, his voice a gravelly buzz through his translator. Nah, Jack said, swirling the dregs in his cup. Unless you're buying. I'm down to my last 5 credits, and I'm saving M for something stupid. Griv chuckled, his middle eye winking. Stupid's your specialty, human. Last week you bet on a meteor race. Lost to a rock. Hey, that rock had hustle. Jack grinned, brushing a hand through his scruffy brown hair. I respect a winner. Truth was, he loved the chaos of this life. Dodging creditors, chasing hunches, living on the edge of broke. It beat the dull grind of a desk job any day. A commotion stirred at the bar's far end. A salvage drone auction, the kind where desperate pilots bid on mystery hauls scooped from a void. Jack's ears perked up as a squat, greasy trader with a cybernetic arm waved a hollow pad. Next lot, unclaimed pod, found drifting near the old trade lanes. No manifest, no beacon, just a rusty bucket begging for a fool to claim it. Starting bid, 1 credit. The crowd snickered, turning back to their drinks. Nobody wanted a pod that old. It was probably full of busted circuits or spoiled rations. Jack, though, felt an itch in his gut, the kind that had gotten him into trouble more times than he could count. He raised his cup, smirking. 1 credit. The trader squinted at him, cyberarm whirring as he scratched his bald head. You serious, Harmon? 1 credit, going once, twice, sold to the guy with more guts than sense. Laughter rippled through the bar, and Jack tipped his cup in mock salute. Here's to bad decisions, he muttered, tossing his last coin onto the counter. Half an hour later, he was strapped into the Eclipse, nursing a fresh headache as the bar's towing drones hauled the pod into view. It was a relic, 10 meters long, patched with dents and scorch marks, its hull faded to a dull gray. You're a beauty, aren't you? Jack said, patting the console like it could hear him. Let's see what kind of trash I just bought. He maneuvered the Eclipse alongside, locking the pod to the cargo bay with a satisfying clunk. The bar's neon lights faded behind him as he punched in a course for open space. Better to crack this thing open away from prying eyes. The pod's access hatch was stubborn. Its lock rusted shut, but Jack was nothing if not persistent. Come on, you old heap, he grunted, jabbing at it with a multi-tool he'd borrowed from a junkyard years back. A spark flew, the hatch hissed, and then, boom, a small blast knocked him flat on his back, ears ringing. Son of a... Jack coughed, waving away a cloud of smoke. His chest stung where the explosion had grazed him, tearing a hole in his jacket. Great. A booby trap. Should have bet on the rock. He sat up, rubbing his ribs when a soft glow cut through the haze, red, pulsing, coming from inside the pod. His heart skipped. What the... The smoke cleared, and Jack froze, jaw-dropping. Inside the pod, 15 transparent stasis tubes lined the walls, each holding a figure, women, or something close to it. Their skin shimmered in wild colors, crimson, turquoise, emerald, gold. They were tall, slender, wrapped in thin silver garments that left little to the imagination. Sleeping beauties from another world, and he'd just blown their front door off. Before he could process it, the nearest tube beeped, its lid sliding open with a hiss. Cold vapor spilled out, and the woman inside stirred. Crimson skin, white hair flowing like silk, eyes snapping open to reveal a violet glow that pinned him like a spotlight. She sat up, graceful even in confusion, and her voice rang out, clear and melodic despite the chaos. "Who dares disturb us?" Jack scrambled to his feet, hands up. Me. Jack Harmon, professional idiot. I didn't mean to wait. You speak English." She stepped out, barefoot on the metal floor, her silver garment clinging to her like a second skin. "We adapt," she said, tilting her head. "I am Vera of the Zethary. Where are we? And why do I smell burnt fabric?" "That'd be me," Jack said, brushing soot off his chest. "Your pod tried to kill me. I found it, bought it, sort of. Long story. You okay?" Vera's violet eyes narrowed, scanning him, then softened. "You're hurt," she said, stepping closer. Before he could protest, she pressed a hand to his chest, right over the burn. Her touch was warm, electric, and a faint tingle spread through him, easing the pain. He caught a whiff of something sweet, cinnamon, maybe mixed with starlight, and realized her fingers were lingering, her body inches from his. Her silver cloth shifted, brushing his arm, and his pulse kicked up a notch. "Whoa, personal space," he managed, voice rougher than he meant. She didn't pull back, her lips curving faintly. "Zethary heal through contact," she said, her breath warm against his jaw. "You'll live. Now explain, why are we here?" Jack swallowed, stepping back as the tingle faded. "I nabbed your pod for 1 credit at a bar auction. Thought it was junk. Didn't expect you. Or them." He waved at the other tubes, where more eyes were fluttering open. Turquoise, emerald, gold, all watching him now with a mix of wariness and curiosity. Vera glanced at her companions, then back at him, her expression darkening. "We were taken. Slavers, Tauric raiders, hit our colony. They locked us in here, left us to drift after an ambush went wrong. You know slaver, though. You smell honest." "Gee, thanks," Jack said, grinning despite himself. "Look, you're free now. I've got a ship, small, kind of beat up, but it's yours if you need it." "Where's home?" "Gone," she said softly, her violet eyes dimming. "Tauric burned it. We're all that's left." She paused, studying him. "But you'll help us?" Jack rubbed his neck, the weight of her words sinking in. "Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not exactly a hero, but I can't just dump you back in space. Let's get you out of here first." A sharp beep cut through the moment, his ship's comms crackling to life. "Lyra to bridge," came a musical voice, turquoise-skinned Zethary now awake and poking at his console. "Jack, there's a signal. Encrypted, hostile. Someone's tracking this pod." "Tracking." Jack bolted for the cockpit, Vera close behind. He slid into the pilot's seat, pulling up the scanner. A red blip pulsed on the edge of the grid, closing fast. "Perfect. We've got company." "Who?" Vera asked, leaning over his shoulder, her hair brushing his cheek. That cinnamon scent hit him again, distracting him for half a second too long. "No clue," he said, shaking it off. "But they're not here for drinks. Strap in. Things are about to get bumpy." He punched the thrusters, the Eclipse lurching forward as the other Zethary stumbled into the cockpit, their colorful forms crowding the tiny space. 15 pairs of alien eyes locked on him, and Jack couldn't help but laugh, a wild, reckless sound. 1 credit, he muttered, dodging an asteroid as the blip gained speed. "Best dumb bet I ever made." The chase was on. The Eclipse jolted forward as Jack Harmon slammed the thrusters to full, the old ship's engines roaring like a beast dragged out of retirement. Red warning lights blinked across the cockpit console, painting his face in a frantic glow. Through the cracked viewport, the Perseus belt stretched out, a jagged mess of spinning rocks and dust clouds, lit by the faint flicker of a distant star. Behind them, that red blip on the scanner pulsed closer, a hunter locking onto prey. "Lyra, talk to me." Jack shouted, his hands dancing over the controls. The turquoise-skinned Zethary stood at the comm station, her fingers fumbling with buttons she'd never seen before. Her silver garment shimmered as she leaned in, her voice steady despite the chaos. "It's encrypted, Jack," she said, her melodic tone cutting through the engine's whine. "Military grade, short range, someone's close, maybe 10 minutes out." 10 minutes, Jack muttered, yanking the yoke to dodge a tumbling asteroid the size of a house. The Eclipse shuddered, metal groaning as gravel pinged off the hull. "Great. Just enough time to regret every choice I've ever made." Vera braced herself against his chair, her crimson skin catching the light as she peered over his shoulder. Her white hair brushed his cheek, sending that damn cinnamon scent wafting through his nose again, a distraction he didn't need right now. "Who tracks a derelict pod this fast?" she asked, her violet eyes sharp with suspicion. "Someone who knows what's in it," Jack said, banking hard to avoid another rock. "Or who? You're not exactly low-profile cargo." He glanced back at the other Zethary crowding the cockpit. 15 of them, their vibrant hues a living rainbow in the dim space. Gold, emerald, sapphire. They were stunning, sure, but right now they were a liability, tripping over each other in the cramped quarters. "Cargo," Zinnia snapped, her emerald skin flaring as she crossed her arms. She'd been the third to wake, her sharp tongue matching her sharper glare. "We're not crates, human, if you're planning to sell us." "Whoa, slow down." Jack cut in, spinning the ship into a tight roll to slip between two colliding asteroids. The move threw Zinnia off balance, and she stumbled into Lyra, who caught her with a quick hand. "I'm not selling anyone. I'm trying to keep us alive. You want to argue? Save it for after we're not dead." Vera placed a hand on Zinnia's shoulder, her touch calming the emerald Zethary scowl. "He's right," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "We're exposed here. Jack, what's the plan?" "Plan?" Jack laughed, a wild edge to it as he dodged another rock. "Step 1, don't crash. Step 2, lose that blip. Step 3, figure out why the hell I didn't stay at the bar." He punched up the scanner, zooming in on the signal. It was gaining, fast, too fast for comfort. "Lyra, can you jam it?" Lyra frowned, her turquoise fingers hesitating over the controls. Maybe? This tech's ancient. Give me a minute." She bent closer, muttering something in a lilting Zethary tongue as she poked at the console. "Make it 30 seconds, Jack said, his grin fading as a proximity alarm blared. The viewport flared orange, a meteor storm dead ahead, a wall of spinning debris that could shred the Eclipse to ribbons. "Oh, you gotta be kidding me." "Jack!" Vera's hand gripped his shoulder, her nails digging in just enough to snap him back. "Can you get through that?" "Gonna have to," he said, cracking his knuckles. "Everyone, strap in, or hold on to something that doesn't move. This is about to get ugly." The Zethary scrambled, some fumbling with the ship's worn harnesses, others bracing against the walls. A gold-skinned woman, Silva, Jack guessed, slid into the co-pilot's seat beside him, her amber eyes wide but steady. "I've flown shuttles," she said, buckling in. "Tell me what to do." "Keep that thruster gauge green," Jack said, nodding to the panel. "And pray this bucket holds together." He didn't wait for a reply, diving the Eclipse straight into the storm. Rocks spun past, some grazing the hull with screeches that set his teeth on edge. The ship bucked like a wild horse, but Jack's hands were steady, threading the needle through gaps no sane pilot would try. "Signal's still locked," Lyra called, her voice rising as she slammed a button. "I can't break it. It's adapting." "Adapting?" Jack cursed under his breath, banking hard as a boulder clipped the port wing. Sparks flew across the console, and Sylvie yelped, yanking the thruster lever to compensate. "That's not a scavenger rig. That's military, or worse." Vera leaned in closer, her body pressing against his arm as the ship rocked. Her warmth seeped through his jacket, her breath hot on his ear as she whispered, "They want us, Jack. The Tauric didn't abandon us. They sold us. Someone's collecting." "Collecting?" Jack's gut twisted, but he kept his eyes on the storm. "What are you rare stamps?" Another rock loomed, and he pulled a sharp turn, the Eclipse skimming its edge. Vera's hand slid down his arm, steadying herself, and for a split second, her fingers brushed his chest, soft, deliberate, sparking a jolt he couldn't ignore. She pulled back fast, but not before he caught the flicker in her violet eyes. "Focus," she said, half a tease, half a warning. "Trying," he shot back, grinning despite the sweat beading on his brow. "You're not making it easy." A loud bang rocked the ship. Something hit the cargo bay hard. "Hull breach," Silva shouted, her hands flying over the gauges. "Rear section, pressure's dropping." "Seal it," Jack barked, swerving to dodge a spinning shard. "Anyone back there?" "No," Lyra said, checking a flickering holomap. Pod still locked down, but the hit tripped a relay. "Secondary signals, live now." "Secondary?" Jack's stomach sank. "You mean there's two of them?" "No. Same source, different frequency," Lyra said, her turquoise face paling. "It's waking something in the pod." Jack risked a glance at Vera, her expression mirroring his dread. "Waking what?" he demanded, but before she could answer, a low hum vibrated through the ship. Not the engines, not the storm, something alive, pulsing for the cargo bay where the Zethri had been trapped. "Jack," Zinnia said, her voice cutting through the noise. She'd moved to the hatch, her emerald skin glowing faintly in the dark. "You sure you didn't buy more than you bargained for?" "Starting to think so," he muttered, gripping the yoke tighter as the meteor storm thickened. Whatever was back there, it wasn't friendly, and neither was the ship closing in. The hum from the cargo bay grew louder, a deep, throbbing pulse that rattled Jack Harmon's bones as he wrestled the Eclipse through the meteor storm. The viewport was a blur of spinning rocks and dust, the ship's hull screaming under the onslaught of gravel and debris. Red lights flashed across the console, warning of the breach in the rear, but Jack's eyes flicked between the scanner and the storm ahead. That red blip, the Hunter, was now 8 minutes out, cutting through the chaos like it owned the dam belt. "What the hell is that noise?" Jack shouted, banking hard to slip past a jagged asteroid, tumbling end over end. The Eclipse groaned, its frame shaking as the hum spiked, syncing with the flicker of the secondary signal Lyra had flagged. "It's the pod," Lyra said, her turquoise hands flying over the comm station. She'd patched into the ship's diagnostics, her voice tight with focus. "Something's powering up. Circuits we didn't trip when we opened it." "Powering up?" Jack's got twisted. He shot a glance at Vera, still braced beside him, her crimson skin taut with tension. "You said it was a stasis rig. What else is in there?" "I don't know," Vera snapped, her violet eyes flashing. "The toric locked us in. Could be a failsafe, a tracker, anything. We were unconscious." Her hand gripped his shoulder again, steadying herself as the ship lurched, and her fingers dug in, a lifeline in the madness. Zinnia spun from the hatch, her emerald glare cutting through the cockpit's dim light. "Or maybe he knows," she said, jabbing a finger at Jack. "You found us too easy, human. 1 credit for a pod rigged to blow. And now this? You're working with them, aren't you?" "Are you kidding me?" Jack barked, pulling a sharp turn that sent Zinnia staggering into the wall. "I'm dodging rocks and babysitting you lot. If I'm a slaver, I'm the worst one in the galaxy." A boulder loomed ahead, and he yanked the yoke, the Eclipse skimming its edge with a teeth-rattling scrape. "Silva, thrusters now." The gold-skinned Zethri in the co-pilot's seat slammed the lever forward, her amber eyes locked on the gauges. "Green, barely," she yelled as the ship surged, narrowly missing a collision. "Jack, she's got a point. That explosion, the signals, someone wanted you to find us." "Not helping," Jack growled, but doubt gnawed at him. The pod's trap, the speed of this chase, it didn't add up for a random salvage gig. He shoved the thought aside, focusing on the storm. "Lyra, kill that signal, both of them. I don't care how." "I'm trying," Lyra said, slamming a panel with frustration. "The secondary's tied to the pod's core. Shutting it down might fry the whole system." "Then fry it." Jack shot back. "Better a dead pod than a dead U.S." The hum crescendoed, a low roar that drowned out the storm's chaos. Then, a sharp crack echoed from the cargo bay, followed by a flicker of blue light seeping through the hatch seams. The Zethari froze, their vibrant faces paling as one. A sapphire-skinned woman near the back whispered, "It's awake." "What's awake?" Jack demanded, his voice rising over the din. He risked a glance at Vera, her expression a mask of dread. "Vera, talk to me." Before she could answer, the ship jolted, not from a rock but from within. The console sparked, and Silva yelped as a surge fried the thruster controls. "Power spike!" she shouted, yanking her hands back. "It's rerouting. Cargo bay's pulling everything." "Cut it," Jack ordered, but Lyra was already on it, ripping a panel open to expose the wiring. Her turquoise fingers danced through the tangle, sparks flying as she worked. The hum shifted, a mechanical whine now, like something alive clawing its way out. Zinnia stormed forward, shoving past the others to grab Jack's arm. "You did this," she hissed, her emerald nails digging into his sleeve. "You woke it, whatever it is, and now they're coming for us. Back off." Jack yanked free, his patience snapping as he spun the ship into a barrel roll to dodge a meteor swarm. The move threw Zinnia into Vera, who caught her with a grunt. "I'm not the enemy here. Look out there." He jabbed a finger at the scanner, the red blip, now 6 minutes away, its signal cutting through the storm like a blade. Vera pulled Zinnia back, her voice low but fierce. "Enough, Zinnia. He's risking his life for us. See it or not, we're in this together." She turned to Jack, her hand brushing his chest as she steadied herself. A fleeting touch, warm and firm, that sent a shiver through him despite the chaos. Her violet eyes locked on his, steadying him too. "What's chasing us? It's not Torek. It's bigger. Bigger." Jack's grin was grim as he wrestled the yoke. "Fantastic. Any guesses?" "Syndicate," Vera said, the word dropping like a stone. "They hunt rare species, turn us into weapons, trophies. If they tag the pod..." She trailed off, her hand lingering on his chest a heartbeat longer before pulling away. "Great," Jack muttered, diving the Eclipse deeper into the storm. "I'm a one-credit hero up against a galactic mafia. Perfect day." The ship rocked again, the hum now a steady growl, and he shouted over his shoulder, "Lyra, status." "Got it," Lyra yelled, yanking a wire free. The blue light dimmed, the hum faltering, but not before a sharp beep pierced the cockpit. The scanner flared, 2 blips now, the second smaller, faster, splitting off from the first. "I killed the pod signal," Lyra said, breathless, "but it sent a ping, reinforcements." "Reinforcements?" Jack's laugh was half-crazed as he dodged a meteor shower, the Eclipse weaving like a drunk dancer. "They're throwing a party, and we're the damn piñata." Silva gripped the console, her gold skin slick with sweat. "Jack, we can't outrun two. Not in this junker." "Then we don't," he said, his mind racing. He scanned a storm ahead, a dense cluster of rocks, spinning tight like a grinder. A death trap for most, but maybe... "Hold on, gonna try something stupid." "Stupid?" Zinnia spat, clinging to the wall. "That's your plan?" "Worked so far." Jack shot back, flashing a reckless grin. He punched the thrusters, aiming straight for the cluster. The Zethari gasped as one, but Vera stayed silent, her faith, or desperation, keeping her glued to his side. Whatever was awake in that pod, whatever hunted them out there, Jack knew one thing. He wasn't going down without a fight. The rocks loomed closer, a wall of spinning death, and the chase was just getting started. The Eclipse screamed as Jack Harmon plunged it into the meteor cluster, a churning grinder of rocks spinning so tight they blurred into a wall of death. The viewport filled with jagged shadows, the ship's hull shrieking as debris scraped its sides like claws on chalkboard. Jack's hands gripped the yoke, knuckles white, his grin a razor's edge of adrenaline and madness. The Zethari clung to anything solid. Harnesses, walls, each other, their vibrant skins flashing in the cockpit's flickering lights. "Jack, you're insane," Silva shouted from the co-pilot's seat, her gold fingers slamming the thruster controls to keep them green. A boulder loomed ahead, and Jack yanked the ship into a spiraling dive, the Eclipse threading a gap so narrow the wingtips sparked against stone. "Insane's my middle name," he yelled back, his voice raw over the chaos. The scanner blipped. 2 Syndicate ships now, the smaller one weaving through the storm with lethal grace, the larger lagging but still too close. 6 minutes out, maybe less. "Silva, rear out power, shields over engines. We're gonna need every ounce." "On it," she said, her amber eyes darting across the console as she punched commands. The shields flared, a faint hum against the relentless pounding of the storm. Behind them, the cargo bay's growl intensified, a mechanical snarl that pulsed through the floor, syncing with Jack's racing heartbeat. Whatever had woken in that pod wasn't just alive, it was angry. Vera crouched beside him, her crimson hand gripping his chair, her white hair whipping as the ship rocked. "Jack," she said, her melodic voice cutting through the noise, "we can't outrun them. Not like this." "Got a better idea?" he snapped, dodging a spinning char that shattered against the shields in a burst of light. "'Cause I'm all ears." Zinnia shoved forward from the hatch, her emerald skin glowing with fury. "You're leading us to slaughter," she hissed, grabbing his shoulder and spinning him half around. Her nails dug into his jacket, her face inches from his. "That thing in the pod. You triggered it, and now they're here. Admit it." Jack jerked free, his arm brushing her chest as he swung back to the controls. A fleeting, accidental graze that sent a jolt through him, her silver garment tight against her curves. He shoved the distraction down, glaring at her. "I didn't trigger squat. I'm flying blind here. Same as you." A rock grazed the hull, and he pulled a hard turn, the Eclipse skidding sideways through the cluster. "Enough," Vera barked, stepping between them. She grabbed Zinnia's arm, pulling her back, then turned to Jack, her violet eyes blazing. She scared Jack not wrong. "The pod's alive. Something's controlling it. I felt it when we woke." "Felt it?" Jack risked a glance at her, his hands still dancing over the yoke. The hum spiked again, and a blue flash lit the cockpit from the hatch, a pulse that made his skin crawl. "What is it?" Vera hesitated, her breath hitching as the ship bucked. "A sentinel," she said finally. "Toric tech, meant to guard us, kill us if we escaped. It's waking because we're free, and it's calling them." "Calling?" Lyra spun from the comms, her turquoise face paling. "That secondary signal. It's a beacon. Syndicate's locked on it. For minutes now." "4." Jack's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Perfect. We're screwed." He scanned the cluster, a dense knot of rocks ahead, spinning in a deadly dance. His mind raced, a crazy idea forming. "Unless... Lyra, can you fry that beacon?" "Tried," she said, slamming the console. "It's hardwired. Needs a manual cut, back in the bay." "Then I'm going," Zinnia said, stepping toward the hatch. Her emerald eyes burned with defiance. "If you're not selling us, human, prove it, cover me." Jack nodded. No time to argue. "Silva, take the stick, keep us weaving. Vera with me." He unstrapped, staggering as the ship jolted, and bolted for the hatch, Vera right behind. The Zethary parted, their stares a mix of fear and hope as the hum grew louder, a predator's growl. The cargo bay was a mess, stasis tubes cracked, wires sparking, and that blue light pulsing from a central panel in the pod's core. The Sentinel, a sleek, spider-like drone, clung to the wall, its metal legs twitching, red eyes flickering to life. Zinnia darted for it, multi-tool in hand, but a claw snapped out, slashing the air inches from her chest. "Zinnia!" Jack lunged, tackling her out of the way. They hit the deck hard, rolling together, her emerald body pressed tight against his. His hand slid across her waist, gripping her hips to steady them both, a firm, urgent hold that sparked heat despite the danger. Her breath hitched, her silver garment shifting under his fingers, and for a heartbeat, their eyes locked, anger, fear, and something electric crackling between them. She shoved him off, scrambling up, her voice shaky but sharp. "Focus, idiot!" she snapped, but her flush betrayed her. "Trying." Jack grinned, rolling to his feet as Vera reached his side. The Sentinel whirred, its claws slashing again, and he ducked, shoving Vera behind him. Plan. Disable it, Vera said, pointing to a glowing core in its chest. But it's fast and linked to us. Linked. Jack dodged another swipe, the claw grazing his jacket. What's that mean? Vera grabbed his arm, pulling him close as the ship rocked. Her crimson body pressed against his side, her hand sliding up his chest to steady him. A deliberate, warm grip that sent a shiver through him, her fingers brushing the edge of his collar. Zethary Tech, she whispered, her lips near his ear, her breath hot against his skin. It reads our minds, our fear. We can stop it, but not alone. Jack's pulse raced, half from her touch, half from the claw inches away. Together, then how? A bond, she said, stepping back as Zinnia slashed at the Sentinel, sparks flying. Our minds, yours, it's how we survived toric raids. One link, all of us stronger. A bond, Jack echoed, dodging as the Sentinel lunged. He caught Zinnia's arm, pulling her back as its claw slammed the deck where she'd stood. What, like a psychic hug? More, Vera said, her violet eyes intense. Physical, intimate. It joins us, makes us a unit. We can fight them, but you'd feel us, Jack. All of us. Jack blinked, the ship's shudder snapping him back. Intimate. He glanced at Zinnia, who froze mid-swing, then at the others crowding the hatch. Lyra, Silva, the rest, their vibrant forms watching him. You mean all 15? Yes, Vera said, unflinching. It's our way, collective strength. One bond, one will. You'd lead it. The Sentinel screeched, its core flaring, and the scanner beeped. 3 minutes now. The Syndicate closing fast. Jack's mind spun. 15 Zethary, a bond that deep, and a fight he couldn't win alone. Okay, he said, his voice rough. Crazy as hell, but okay. What do we do? Vera smiled, faint but fierce. We start now. The Eclipse rocked as Jack Harmon nodded to Vera, his heart pounding louder than the meteor storm tearing at the ship's hull. Start now, he repeated, his voice a rough edge over the Sentinel's mechanical screech. The spider-like drone lunged again, its claw slashing the air an inch from his chest. He ducked, shoving Vera back as Zinnia swung her multi-tool, sparks flying off the Sentinel's gleaming shell. Yes, now, Vera said, her violet eyes fierce. She grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the center of the cargo bay as the other Zethary poured in from the cockpit. Lyra, Silva, and the rest, their vibrant skins a blur of crimson, turquoise, gold, and emerald. The ship shuddered, the Syndicate ships now 2 minutes out, their signals cutting through the storm's chaos. Form a circle, Vera shouted, her melodic command slicing through the noise. The Zethary moved fast, surrounding Jack and the Sentinel in a tight ring, their hands linking as the drone's red eyes flared, its core pulsing blue. Zinnia hesitated, her emerald glare darting between Jack and the machine, but Vera yanked her into place, completing the chain. What do I do? Jack asked, planting his feet as the Sentinel whirred, its claws twitching. The hum from its core synced with the Zethary's breathing, a rhythm that made his skin prickle. Stand with me, Vera said, stepping into the circle's heart. She pressed her crimson body against his, her silver garment brushing his chest as she gripped his shoulders. Her warmth seeped through his jacket, her fingers sliding up his neck, a firm, deliberate touch that sent a jolt down his spine. Open your mind, she whispered, her lips grazing his ear, her breath hot and sweet with that cinnamon edge. Feel us. Jack swallowed hard, the heat of her closeness sparking a tension he couldn't shake, not with a killer drone 3 feet away. Easier said than done, he muttered, but he planted his hands on her waist, his fingers curling against her hips. Her curves pressed under his grip, soft yet unyielding, and a rush hit him, electric raw, like a wire sparking to life. The Zethary began to hum, a low, harmonic chant that vibrated through the bay, resonating in Jack's chest. Vera's hands tightened on his neck, pulling him closer, and then Lyra stepped in, her turquoise fingers brushing his arm, tracing the muscle there with a light, teasing pressure. Silva joined, her gold hand sliding across his lower back, her touch warm and steady. One by one, the others closed in, sapphire, amber, emerald, each laying a hand on him, their silver-clad bodies brushing his in a symphony of contact. Fingers grazed his shoulders, his chest, his thighs, each touch igniting a pulse of heat that blurred the line between danger and desire. Holy! Jack's breath hitched, his body tensing under the onslaught. It wasn't just physical. Something deeper surged through him, a flood of sensations not his own. Fear from Zinnia, trust from Silva, resolve from Lyra, and Vera's fierce, steady will anchoring it all. His hands flexed on her hips, pulling her tighter, and her violet eyes locked on his, wide with wonder. "It's working," she gasped, her chest rising fast against his. "You're the bridge. Focus it." The sentinel screeched, its claws slashing wildly as the bond took hold. Jack's mind stretched, splintering into 15 pieces, each Zethary a thread weaving into him. He saw flashes, burning Zethary villages, Tauric ships raining fire, Vera's hands clawing at a stasis tube. Pain, loss, rage, it hit him like a punch, but he gritted his teeth, channeling it back. "Fight it!" he roared, his voice a raw command. The Zethary moved as one, their hum rising to a piercing note. The sentinel staggered, its claws faltering, but then a sharp crack split the air. Zinnia broke the circle, her emerald hand ripping free as her eyes glazed over, blank and cold. "No," she hissed, lunging at Jack with her multi-tool raised. "They're in me, Syndicate." "Zinnia!" Vera cried, shoving Jack aside as the tool slashed down, grazing her arm. Crimson blood welled, and Jack caught her, his hands sliding under her shoulders, brushing the soft curve beneath her silver cloth, a desperate grip that sparked heat even as he spun her clear. Zinnia swung again, her movements jerky like a puppet on strings. "She's hacked," Lyra shouted, diving for the Sentinel's core as it rebooted, its claws snapping toward Jack. "They've got her mind," Tauric text linked to Syndicate. Jack dodged a claw, shoving Vera behind a crate as Zinnia charged, her emerald strength pinning him against the wall. Her body pressed hard against his, her hips grinding into his as she fought the control, her breath ragged. His hands caught her wrists, sliding down her arms to wrestle the tool free. A rough, tense struggle that left his fingers brushing her chest, her silver garment shifting under his grip. "Zinnia, snap out of it," he growled, their faces inches apart, her emerald eyes flickering with trapped panic. "I can't," she gasped, trembling as he pinned her arms. The bond pulsed, her fear, her fight, and Jack pushed back, pouring his will into her through their touch. "Together," Vera yelled, rejoining the circle as the others tightened their grip on Jack. The hum surged, and Jack felt it, a shared strength flooding him, raw and unshakable. He shoved Zinnia back, her tool clattering free, and spun toward the Sentinel as Lyra jammed her multi-tool into its core. Sparks flew, the drone's red eyes dimming, but not before it fired a pulse, straight at the ceiling. The base shook, metal buckling as the pulse blew a hole skyward. "Hull's breached again." Silva's voice crackled over the comms from the cockpit. "Jack, they're 1 minute out." Jack hauled Zinnia up, her emerald form limp but free, her eyes clearing as the Syndicate's hold snapped. "Sorry," she muttered, clutching his arm, her fingers brushing his chest, a shaky, unintended caress that lingered. "Later," he said, dragging her toward Vera. The bond thrummed, alive and fierce, linking them all. "Can we use this fight back?" "Yes," Vera said, stepping close, her hand finding his again. She pressed her crimson palm to his chest, fingers splaying over his heart, a firm, electric touch that pulsed through the bond, her violet eyes blazing. "We're one now. Your will, our strength. Aim it." Jack nodded, the storm raging outside as the Syndicate ships loomed. He turned to the hatch, the Zethary falling in behind him, their hands still brushing his arms, his back, each touch a spark in the circuit they'd forged. The Sentinel was down, but the Real fight was seconded away. "Cockpit, now!" he barked, leading the charge as the Eclipse barreled through the cluster, the bond burning bright. The Eclipse burst out of the meteor cluster like a battered bird breaking free of a storm, its hull scarred and smoking, but still flying. Jack Harmon gripped the yoke, his breath ragged as the bond with the Zethary pulsed through him, a living current of 15 minds woven into his own. The cockpit hummed with their presence. Vera at his side, her crimson hand steady on his shoulder. Silva in the co-pilot's seat, her gold fingers nursing the thrusters. Lyra at comms, her turquoise eyes scanning for threats. And Zinnia, leaning against the wall, her emerald skin still flushed from their clash. "Scanners clear, for now," Lyra said, her voice sharp over the ship's creaking. "Those syndicate bastards pulled back after the cluster. Guess they didn't like the odds." "They'll regroup," Jack muttered, easing the Eclipse toward open space. His hands ached from the fight, but the bond kept him sharp. Vera's resolve, Silva's calm, even Zinnia's stubborn fire fueling him. "Arcturus is our shot, Coalition base, big guns. We get there, we're safe." "Safe," Zinnia snorted, crossing her arms. Her silver garment hugged her curves, catching the light as she glared at him. "You think a Coalition outpost will take in a human junker and 15 Zethary strays? They'll sell us faster than you can blink." "Not if we play it right," Jack shot back, glancing at Vera. "You said you're rare, endangered, right? Coalition's got laws for that. We've got leverage." Vera nodded, her violet eyes steady. "Fewer than 50 Zethary left," confirmed. "They can't ignore us." Her hand slid down his arm, a warm, grounding touch that brushed his wrist, sending a faint shiver through him. "But we need to move fast." Jack punched in the coordinates, the Eclipse lurching toward Arcturus outpost, a gleaming fortress of alloy and energy fields orbiting a gas giant. The bond thrummed, amplifying his focus, but he couldn't shake the memory of their ritual. Those hands on him, Vera's breath on his ear, Zinnia's body pressed tight. It lingered, a tension he buried under the stakes ahead. Hours later, the outpost loomed through the viewport, its defense arrays glinting like teeth. "Arcturus control, this is Eclipse," Jack said into the comms, his voice steady despite the ship's battered state. "Requesting emergency docking, carrying endangered sentients seeking asylum." A pause, then a gruff voice crackled back. "Eclipse, state your ID and cargo." "Jack Harmon, independent salvager," he replied. "Cargo's 15 Zethary survivors, Tauric raid victims. We're under pursuit, need protection." Another pause, longer this time. "Docking base 6, the voice said finally. "Proceed with caution, scanners active." Jack guided the ship in, the bond letting him feel the Zethary's unease. Lyra's quickened pulse, Silva's tense grip on the console. "They're twitchy," he muttered. "Something's off." "Agreed," Vera said, leaning close. Her crimson shoulder brushed his, her hair grazing his cheek as she studied the scanner. That cinnamon scent hit him again, stirring a heat he shoved down. Too smooth. They're hiding something. The Eclipse docked with a heavy thunk, the ramp lowering into a sterile bay lined with Coalition guards. Too many for a welcome party. Jack led the way out, the Zethary falling in behind, their bond a silent web linking them. A tall officer stepped forward, his uniform crisp, his gray eyes cold. "Jack Harmon," he said, his tone clipped. "I'm Commander Brandt, Coalition Security. Your passengers are a surprise." "They're refugees," Jack said, keeping his hands loose but ready. "Zethary, protected status. We're here to claim it." Brandt's gaze flicked over the Zethary, lingering on Vera's crimson form, then back to Jack. "We'll see. Follow me, processing's this way." His guards fanned out, their rifles subtle but present, and Jack felt Zinnia's suspicion spike through the bond like a warning flare. They were led through gleaming corridors, the outposts hum a stark contrast to the Eclipse's chaos. Vera stayed close, her arm brushing his, a steadying touch that kept him grounded. Then the scanner beeped, Lyra's voice hissing through his earpiece. Jack, 2 ships just dropped out of FTL. Syndicate signatures. One's big, real big. Perfect, Jack muttered, catching Vera's eye. They're not giving up. Brant halted at a massive chamber. Hollow screens lining the walls, a viewport showing the gas giant's swirling storms. Wait here, he said, stepping aside as the doors slid shut behind them. Too fast, too clean, Jack's got scream trap. Before he could react, the hollow screens flared, a silver-skinned figure materializing. Koran Vex, Syndicate Enforcer, his black eyes glinting like voids. Harmon, he rasped, his voice a cold blade. You got something I want. Hand over the Zethary, and you walk. Resist, and I take them from your corpse. Jack squared his shoulders, the bond pulsing with the Zethary's defiance. Not for sale, Vex. Go find another hobby. Vex's lips curled, a cruel slash. Pity, the screen shifted, revealing a second figure. A Zethary, her skin a dull gray, her eyes hollowed by cybernetic implants. Chains dangled from her arms, her silver garment torn. Recognize her, Vera? Vera gasped, stumbling into Jack. He caught her, his hands sliding under her arms, brushing the soft swell beneath her silver cloth. A firm, instinctive grip that sent a jolt through him as her body pressed close. Her breath hitched, her violet eyes wide with horror. Caliph, she whispered, trembling against him. She was my sister, my friend. They broke her. Jack tightened his hold, his fingers tracing her waist, grounding her as heat flared between them. A fleeting, electric pull he forced down. What did they do to her? He growled, glaring at Vex. Upgraded her, Vex said, his voice dripping venom. A perfect weapon, Zethary mind, Syndicate steel. She's mine now, and she's coming for you. The chamber doors hissed open, and Caliph stepped in, slow, mechanical, her gray skin glinting under the lights. Her cybernetic arm whirred, a blade snapping out, and her hollow eyes locked on Vera. Traitor, she rasped, her voice a distorted echo. You left me. No, Vera cried, pulling free of Jack as Caliph lunged. He dove, tackling Vera out of the way, their bodies crashing to the floor. His hands slid across her hips, gripping tight as they rolled, her silver garment riding up under his fingers, a tense, desperate contact that sparked heat despite the danger. She landed atop him, her chest heaving against his, her violet eyes blazing with pain. Caliph, stop, Vera pleaded, but the cyborg swung again, her blade slashing the air where Jack's head had been. He rolled them clear, shoving Vera behind him as the Zethary circled, their bond surging with panic. She's not your sister anymore, Jack said, hauling Vera up. His hand brushed her lower back, a steadying touch that lingered, her warmth seeping through. Vex owns her. Not fully, Vera whispered, clutching his arm. I feel her through the bond. She's still in there. Caliph charged, her blade aimed at Jack's chest, and the fight was on. Jack Harmon sprang to his feet, shoving Vera behind him as Caliph's blade sliced the air, missing his throat by a hair. The cyborg Zethary moved like a storm. Fast, relentless, her gray skin glinting under the chamber's harsh lights, her cybernetic arm whirring with each strike. The bond pulsed through Jack, a torrent of Zethary emotions. Vera's grief, Zinnia's fury, Lyra's fear, flooding his senses as he dodged, the Eclipse crew scattering around him. Stay back, Jack barked, ducking another swing. Caliph's hollow eyes tracked him, her distorted voice rasping. You can't save her, as she lunged again. He sidestepped, grabbing a loose pipe from the floor, a pathetic weapon against her steel, but better than nothing. Vera darted forward, her crimson form a blur as she grabbed his arm. Jack, we can reach her, she cried, her hand sliding up his chest, fingers curling into his jacket, a desperate, anchoring grip that sent a jolt through him. Her body pressed close, her silver garment brushing his side, and her violet eyes blazed with urgency. The bond, it's stronger now. We can break their hold. Reach her? Jack swung the pipe, deflecting a claw that screeched against metal. Sparks flew, and he stumbled back, Vera clinging to him. She's trying to gut me. How do we even start? Together, Vera said, her breath hot against his neck as she tightened her grip, her fingers slipping under his collar to graze his skin, a fleeting, electric touch that sparked heat despite the chaos. Focus with me. Through you. The Zethari closed in, their vibrant hands linking again, Lyra's turquoise fingers on Silva's gold, Zinnia's emerald grip on another sapphire. The bond surged, a living circuit, and Jack felt it sharpen, Vera's while merging with his. Caliph froze mid-strike, her blade trembling as her hollow eyes flickered, a faint violet gleam breaking through. Caliph! Vera shouted, stepping out from Jack's shield. He yanked her back, his arm wrapping around her waist, his hand sliding low on her hip, a firm, possessive hold that pressed her curves against him, her warmth seeping through. Fight it! She's still in there, she pleaded, her voice cracking as she leaned into him, her chest rising fast against his arm. The cyborg twitched, her cybernetic arm jerking as if caught between commands. Traitor, she rasped again, but softer, a crack in the syndicate's steel grip. Jack tightened his hold on Vera, his fingers digging in her hip, a tense, grounding contact that pulsed through the bond, amplifying their shared strength. Now, Vera gasped, her hand finding his, guiding it up her side to rest just under her ribcage. The move was urgent, intimate, her silver cloth shifting under his palm as their minds locked, a psychic bridge snapping into place. Jack's vision split, the chamber blurred, and he was inside Caliph's head, a storm of static and pain. Darkness swirled, memories of Zethari, skies burning, toric chains, syndicate labs carving her apart. Vera's presence flared beside him, a crimson flame in the void, and he felt her grief like a blade. Caliph, it's me, she whispered, her voice echoing in his skull as her real body trembled against his, her hand squeezing his tighter. Jack pushed forward, his human stubbornness cutting through the static. You're not theirs, he growled, his will a hammer against the syndicate's code. He saw her, a younger Caliph, laughing with Vera under alien stars, buried under layers of control. Come back. Caliph's real form staggered, her blade dropping as her gray hands clawed her head. Vera, she croaked, violet flickering stronger in her eyes. The bond roared, the Zethari's collective strength pouring through Jack. Lyra's precision, Silva's calm, even Zinnia's raw defiance, smashing the syndicate's hold. Yes, Vera cried, tears streaking her crimson cheeks as she pressed harder into Jack, her body shaking against his. His hand slid up her back, brushing the curve beneath her shoulder blade, a steadying, charged touch that anchored them both as Caliph's mind broke free. The cyborg collapsed to her knees, her cybernetic arms sparking as she clutched her chest. See you, she rasped, her voice her own again, weak, broken but hers. Jack eased Vera off him, his fingers lingering on her waist a heartbeat longer, the heat of her closeness lingering as he stepped toward Caliph. Caliph! Vera knelt beside her, reaching out, but the cyborg flinched, her gray form trembling. You're safe now, we've got you. No, Caliph whispered, her violet eyes dimming. They're still here. Her head jerked up, staring past them as the chamber's hollow screens flared back to life. Kuran Vek's silver face reappeared, his black eyes glinting with cold fury. Touching, Vek sneered, his voice a venomous hiss. But futile. She's mine. Always will be. He snapped his fingers, and Caliph convulsed, a scream tearing from her as her cybernetic arm whirred back to life, blade snapping out. Kill them. Galit, no. Vera lunged, but Jack caught her, pulling her back as the cyborg rose, her movements jerky but lethal. His arms wrapped around Vera's torso, his hands brushing the soft underside of her chest, a brief, tense graze that sent a shiver through them both as he spun her clear. Caliph's blade slashed the floor where she'd stood, sparks flying. She's not free, Zinnia shouted, dodging a claw as the Zethary scattered. They've got a backup deep code. Jack shoved Vera behind a console, his mind racing through the bond. Lyra, scan her. Find it, he barked, ducking as Caliph charged him, her gray strength slamming him against the wall. Her blade pinned his shoulder, grazing flesh, and he grunted, grabbing her wrist, a rough, desperate hold that brushed her cold, metallic chest as he wrestled her back. Lyra darted to a hollow panel, her turquoise fingers flying. Got it. Neural implant back of her skull. It's overriding us. Disable it. Jack roared, twisting Caliph's arm as her blade scraped his jacket. Vera joined him, her hands gripping Caliph's shoulders, her crimson fingers brushing Jack's as they fought together. The bond pulsed, their wills clashing with the Syndicate's grip, and Caliph froze, her violet eyes wide with torment. I can't hold, she gasped, her voice breaking. Then, a surge erupted from her core, a self-destruct pulse that threw Jack and Vera back. They hit the floor hard, rolling together, his hands sliding across her thigh, a firm, instinctive grip that sparked heat as he shielded her. The blast rocked the chamber, Caliph's gray form crumpling as her cybernetics fizzled out, smoke rising from her lifeless shell. No, Vera sobbed, clawing toward her, but Jack held her tight, his arm around her waist, his fingers brushing her lower back as he pulled her close. She's gone, he said, his voice rough against her ear, her trembling body pressed against his. Vex's laugh cut through the silence, chilling and sharp. A loss, but not the end, he said, his hollow image looming. You've shown me your bond. Harmon, impressive. The Syndicate will have it. And you. The screens flickered, a new signal pulsing, stronger, wider, a call to something massive beyond Arcturus. Jack hauled Vera up, her warmth lingering as the Zethary regrouped, their bond frayed but fierce. Branson on it, he muttered, eyeing the locked doors. And Vex just raised the stakes. Lyra's voice trembled from the panel. Jack, fleet signatures. Syndicate's calling in the big guns. The chamber trembled as Caliph's cybernetic husk smoked on the floor, her final pulse fading into silence. Jack Harmon hauled Vera to her feet, his arms still locked around her crimson waist, his fingers brushing the curve of her lower back, a steadying touch that lingered as her warmth pressed against him. Her silver garment clung to her trembling form, and her violet eyes shimmered with tears, fixed on the lifeless gray shell that had once been her friend. She's gone, Vera whispered, her voice breaking as she leaned into Jack, her chest rising fast against his. The bond pulsed between them, grief, rage, and a fragile thread of hope from the other Zethary circling the wreckage. Not gone, Jack said, his voice rough but firm as he eased her back, his hand sliding up her side, grazing the soft edge beneath her ribcage, a fleeting, charged contact that sent a shiver through him. She fought, gave us a shot. We're not wasting it. He turned to Lyra, her turquoise fingers still trembling over the hollow panel. Fleet signatures. How long? Minutes, Lyra said, her melodic tone tight with panic. Syndicate's broadcasting, wideband. Every ship in range heard it. Brant's sold us out, Zinnia snarled, her emerald skin flaring as she kicked a shard of Caliph's arm across the floor. Coalition's a trap. We're dead if we stay. Then we don't, Jack said, his mind racing through the bond's shared instincts. Silva's calm, Zinnia's fire, Vera's resolve. Eclipse now. We're running. He grabbed Vera's hand, pulling her toward the doors as the Zethary fell in, their vibrant forms a defiant rainbow against the sterile chamber. The corridors blurred past, alarms blaring as Coalition guards scrambled, too late to stop them. Jack led the charge, the bond guiding his steps, Vera's fingers laced tight with his. Her silver cloth brushed his arm, her closeness a spark he couldn't ignore, but he shoved it down, focusing on the docking bay ahead. The Eclipse waited, battered but theirs, and they piled in, Jack sliding into the pilot's seat as Silva took co-pilot, her gold hands flying over the controls. Thrusters hot, Silva said, her amber eyes steady. Shields barely. We're a sitting duck if they catch us. They won't, Jack growled, punching the engines to life. The Eclipse roared, lurching free of the bay as Arcturus' defense arrays swiveled, but too slow. The Bond sharpened his reflexes, Lyra's precision feeding his hands, and he weaved past a volley of warning shots, the ship diving into open space. The viewport flared, 3 Syndicate ships dropping from FDL, sleek and predatory, their hulls glinting like knives. "They're fast," Zinnia said, leaning over Jack's shoulder, her emerald breath hot on his neck as she gripped the chair. "Faster than us." "Then we get creative," Jack said, scanning the charts. A nebula glowed on the edge of the system. Dense, uncharted, a gamble. "There, radiation will mask us." "Hold on." He banked hard, the Eclipse shuddering as it plunged toward the swirling gases, the Syndicate ships peeling after them like hounds on a scent. The nebula swallowed them, its purple-green haze cloaking the ship as radiation warnings pinged across the console. Jack eased the thrusters, letting the Eclipse drift, the Bond a quiet hum now, exhausted but alive. "Lyra," he said, swiveling to face her. "Anything on comms?" She shook her head, turquoise hair falling across her face. "Static. They're blind in here, same as us. But they're searching." "Good enough," Jack said, slumping back. His eyes found Vera, standing near the hatch, her crimson form tense. "You okay?" She nodded, stepping closer, her hand brushing his arm, a soft, deliberate touch that lingered as she sank into the seat beside him. "Caliph, she's gone, but I still feel her," she murmured, her violet eyes searching his. "The Bond, it's changing." "Changing?" Jack frowned, his hand resting on hers, his fingers tracing her wrist, a gentle, warm contact that stirred a flicker of heat. "What do you mean?" Vera hesitated, her silver garment shifting as she leaned in, her shoulder pressing against his. "When we linked, when you touched us all, it did something." Her hand slid to her abdomen, a subtle gesture that froze Jack's breath. "I'm carrying something new. A child, ours." "Ours?" Jack's voice cracked, his hand tightening on hers, brushing the soft skin of her palm. The Bond flared, shock from Lyra, off from Silva, unease from Zinnia. And he felt it too, a faint pulse, alien yet his. "You mean the ritual?" "Yes," Vera said, her violet eyes soft but fierce. "Citali adapt fast. Your strength, our bond, it's alive in me. A hybrid." Her hand guided his, pressing it low on her stomach. A firm, intimate touch that sent a rush through him, her warmth radiating under his fingers as the silver cloth stretched taut. Jack's pulse raced, the heat of her body under his hand sparking a tension he couldn't name, primal, protective, overwhelming. "A kid," he muttered, half laughing, half dazed. "1 credit, and now I'm a dad?" "It's more," Zinnia cut in, her emerald voice sharp as she stepped closer. "Syndicate wants Zethary. Imagine what they'd do for a hybrid. That's why they're hunting us." "She's right," Lyra said, spinning from the comms. "Signal. Faint, but it's not the fleet." Her turquoise fingers danced over the panel, pulling up a hollow feed, a crackling image from Calith's wreckage, her gray form still, but a red light pulsing in her chest. "Calith!" Vera gasped, pulling free of Jack as she stood, her hand brushing his chest. A quick, electric graze that lingered as she stared at the screen. "She's alive." "No," Lyra said, her voice dropping. "It's an AI, Syndicate core. It's her shell, broadcasting." The feed hissed, a synthetic voice cutting through, hybrid detected. "Asset value, infinite. All units, acquire." Jack's gut sank, the Bond pulsing with dread. "They know," he said, turning to Vera. "That kid, they'll tear the galaxy apart for it." "Then we run," Vera said, her hand finding his again, her fingers sliding up his arm to grip his shoulder, a steady, charged touch that anchored them both. Beyond Coalition space, uncharted systems. Zethary colonies might still hide there. "Run where?" Silva asked, her gold eyes narrowing as the nebula's haze thickened outside. "We're low on fuel. Shields are shot." A proximity alarm blared, cutting her off. The viewport flared. A Syndicate scout ship, smaller but deadly, emerging from the gas like a shark. "Found us," Zinnia growled, her emerald hands balling into fists. Jack spun back to the controls, the bond snapping tight. 15 minds, one will. "Strap in," he said, punching the thrusters as the Eclipse surged forward. The scout fired, a plasma bolt grazing the hull, and he yanked the yoke, diving deeper into the nebula's chaos. "Jack!" Vera shouted, stumbling into him as the ship rocked. He caught her, his arm wrapping around her torso, his hand sliding across her lower back. A firm, urgent grip that pressed her silver-clad curves against him. Her breath hitched, her violet eyes locking on his, and the bond flared. Fear, trust, and that new pulse, fragile but fierce. "Hold on," he said, his voice rough as his fingers brushed her hip, steadying her. "We're not done yet." He banked hard, the scout's next shot sizzling past, and aimed for a dark rift in the nebula, a void beyond the charts. "Uncharted space?" Lyra asked, her turquoise voice trembling as she braced at comms. "Jack, we don't know what's out there." "Better than what's back here," he shot back, the Eclipse plunging into the rift as the scout veered to follow. The nebula vanished, replaced by a starfield. Wild, unknown, endless. The bond hummed, Vera's hand still on his shoulder, her warmth a lifeline as the Syndicate's signal faded behind them. "They'll keep coming," Zinnia said, her emerald eyes hard. "That AI, it's locked on the kid." "Then we stay one step ahead," Jack said, his hand resting on Vera's, his fingers tracing her wrist, a quiet, electric promise. "One credit got us this far. We're not stopping now." The Eclipse sailed into the dark, hunted but unbroken, a new life beating at its heart.